Final preview for this weekend's fixtures, folks. Wales and Fiji this weekend. Wales go into this one at home, ranked lower than Fiji in Rugby World Rankings terms. It's just the one spot between them, 11th hosting 10th. Wales are on a bit of a losing run and could certainly use a feel-good victory. Fiji got hammered last week by Scotland away at Murrayfield, remembering they didn't have any of their big gun players available due to it being outside the test window. So one would imagine they will put in a much improved performance. This week, Warren Gatland basically dismissed last week's performance based on how many guys they had out and said Wales would have kind of been in a similar position had they played last week. Squads have been named. We'll go through some of the ins and outs. We'll go through some stats. I love a good stat. The recent history, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Wales, as I said, at home, could certainly use a feel-good win. They have got some kind of big gun players back. Some of the guys who missed the tour to Australia are back. The front row, Gareth Thomas, Dewey Lake, and Archie Griffin. I'm pretty sure that's the same front row that played the last time we saw these guys play out in Australia. Dewey Lake still captains the side. There's still a little bit of an injury cloud around Gareth Thomas. Apparently his minutes have been kind of managed at training because he's still got a bit of a niggling injury, but he is still named to start. And Archie Griffin, to be fair, has had very kind of limited game time for Bath this season. I think he's only had 2 games from the bench, each of which about 20 odd minutes. So he is a little bit lacking on game time. Hopefully he comes into it without any kind of heavy level of rust. The second row is a experienced combo back into the Welsh side who missed out on the Australian tour. Adam Baird and Will Rowlands. Adam Baird, I think, is another one who they said is having his game time, or at least his training time managed, because he's also not 100% in terms of having a little bit of a niggling injury. In the back row, Aaron Wainwright is back. Remember, he missed that last game against the Aussies. Tommy Reffel, the tackle machine. Tommy Turnover continues at number 7. And then Tame Plumtree, who I honestly wasn't that sold on when he initially got named for Wales, because he's a guy who played for my Blues here in Super Rugby and didn't really crack the Blues squad. Then he was kind of fast-tracked into the Welsh squad. But in the URC, the last few games I've seen him playing for Scarlets, I think he's looked pretty good. So maybe does know what he's doing, but he shifts from number 8 to number 6 to make way for Wainwright. The 9-10 combo is the all-Gloucester duo of Thomas Williams and Gareth Anscombe. Haven't been watching the Premiership this year. It's not being broadcast here in New Zealand for the first time in a long time, sadly. However, everyone who I talk to who's watching it regularly says these Welsh boys who are playing for Gloucester are doing really well. So it's good to have that kind of club connection there as well. It means these guys should be pretty in tune with each other. And then Ben Thomas has been in good form. He shifts to number 12 for this week's game. Max Llewellyn's another one of those Gloucester connections who's also been in cracking form. So the Gloucester backline contingent of this Welsh squad, by all accounts, is in some good form. There's a debut for Blair Murray out on the left wing. Gats kind of talked up his left boot being a good attribute to have to this Welsh squad out in the left wing. So potentially looking to do a bit of the old James Lowe thing with a guy with a left boot on the left wing. And then Mason Grady shifts from the midfield to the right wing for this one. And Cam Winnett is an ever kind of consistent present under Gats there at fullback. Replacements, Ryan Elias, Nicky Smith, and Kieran Asarati. I don't know what it is about Nicky Smith being named on the bench, but I just saw the little image of him with a big old grin on his face wearing the Welsh kit, and I gave a little bit of a fist bump. I don't know what it is. I like Nicky Smith. I rate him as a player. Chiunza drops to the bench for this one. Remember, he can cover lock and loose forward, but I'm guessing it's more going to be lock, especially if Adam Baird's game time and training and whatnot's being managed. James Botham and Jack Morgan are the 2 loose forward replacements, so Gats kind of talked up the fact that because some of these guys are going into this one potentially a little bit niggly, that they wanted to have the extra forward on the bench. Jack Morgan himself is only kind of just back into full training. Alice Bevan drops to the bench. Remember, he started that last game over in Australia at number 9. And Sam Costello is the kind of utility back replacement. I mean, mostly 10 replacement, isn't he? But there's plenty of guys in the Welsh backline who can shift into multiple positions. So it seems like a kind of low-risk 6-2 split for the Welsh boys with the versatility they have in the starting 15. For Fiji, they are bolstered by the return of a number of big gun players. If you want Semi Ranradra, Joshua Tuisova, Waisea Nagathalevu, these guys are all back, which is pleasing news, albeit these guys are the kind of veteran players, the 34-year-old, the 32-year-old, the 30-year-old, and whatnot. So Coach McBurn will have to potentially balance how many of the veterans he plays compared to some of the young fellas. Ronnie Maui is another one of the guys back. He's only had, I think, one start for Saracens this year at loosehead, but he is getting a start for Fiji. Ikanaveri and Tawaki continue their roles at 2 and 3 from last week, although Ikanaveri does not have to captain the side with the return of Nayatalevu, who takes the captain's armband. Nasila Sile and Maya Vanua are the locks, so Maya Vanua, who plays his rugby in the Premiership, he is straight into the starting 15. He'll be kind of hoping to help out at line-out time. And Darren Langi, Salawa, and Thanakai Vata. That's an unchanged back row, which is a potentially interesting one because the Fijian defensive effort last week left a little bit to be desired. So these guys in particular, the back rowers who you expect to get through a lot of tackles, will be looking to front up. Lomani and Muntz is also the same 19 combo like the Welsh boys. These guys played their rugby together here in Super Rugby, Super Rugby Pacific, for the Fijian and Drua. So they'll be looking to get a bit of ball, shift things around, and open up the Welsh defence with this backline that they've got. Because as I said, Joshua Tuisova, he's been playing a bit of right wing, I think, for Racing 92 this season, but the last couple of games he's been in the midfield, and he is in the midfield, number 12 for this one. Waisea Nayatalevu captains the side at 13. Waningolo is on the right wing, playing his rugby for Toulon, so he's another one of the kind of top 14 imports. I think he scored a few tries this season. And Ranradra, who's largely been playing for the midfield in Lyon, is onto the left wing with this one. I guess if you got Tuisova and Nayatalevu, it makes more sense to put Ranradra on the wing. But these guys are also pretty versatile. Karawalevu, who played on the wing last week, shifts to fullback for this one. Replacements: Matavesi, Hetet, and Koreo Duadua. So Matavesi is one of the guys who's into the 23 who wasn't available last week. Voasese, Tuisui are the two forward replacements. So Tuisui is a big lump of a man, big physical presence to come off the bench. He'll be looking to put in some big hits on some tired players. Kurivoli, Armstrong, Ravula, and Mangala are the three back replacements. So it's a 5-3 split for the Fijians. Armstrong, Ravula started last week, but with the return of some of the other guys in the back line, it is to the bench for him. Some stats. Sadly, Wales' stats this year don't make for the prettiest reading. Like some of the X-factor things that you expect, which kind of lead to tries, clean breaks, defenders beaten, run meters and whatnot. They've not really been there. Like pretty much of all the tier 1 sides, Wales is at the bottom of the pack for those kind of numbers. Like even against Australia, they trailed for clean breaks. And Australia's attack under Joe Schmidt, they're still rebuilding, has not been that sharp. I mean, this season, I think they're getting 3.5 clean breaks a game, and they're conceding over 6. So yeah, it's been a rough 2024 for the Welsh, but like the Aussies, they are in rebuilding mode, and the slow starts for the Welsh is not helping them. I think in only 2 games of the 8 games played this season for Wales, they have managed to score a try in the first 20, whereas they've regularly conceded a fair few points in that first quarter. So the Fijians were kind of caught in that first quarter against Scotland last week napping. If the same happens to the Welsh this week, if it's a reverse, then the pressure really goes on them at home. Remembering this side is young, very similar to the Wallabies. It's the same average age, 25. Like that's really young. Remember, I think I mentioned in the other video, the All Blacks are like 27. The Irish are close to like 28. The Boks are 29. So 25 is a pretty young side. The Italians, the Wallabies, and the Welsh. These are the youngest teams that we are seeing fielded. So ideally for them, they want to start well to take a little bit of that pressure off. For the Fijians, man, last week, line-out struggled, 77%. It's going to need to be better. Tackles struggled. They missed 38 tackles against the Scots for a completion rate of 80%. If you're missing 1 in 5, it's tending to be a pretty long day at the office. I mean, they did manage, to their credit, to have a bit of a comeback, a mid-period comeback. They went miles behind, scored 3 tries in a row, and then, sadly for them, the game kind of got taken away from them by the Scots towards the end. So there was a middle period where they did well, remembering without all the big gun players. They can't afford to let Wales go out to an early lead. They'll need to start out of the blocks firing. Remembering this Fiji side, without the big gun players, without your Radradras and Tuisovas and whatnot, did manage to win the Pacific Nations Cup. They had wins over Canada and Samoa and Tonga. And you might dismiss that as not being that important. They beat Japan as well. But remember, Samoa beat Italy. And Italy finished above Wales in the Six Nations. So Fiji's accomplishment in that competition was by no means a shoo-in. They were certainly one of the favourites, but they managed to go through the competition unbeaten. Recent history between these sides, it feels like it's closer, but it's not. It's 5-0 to the Welsh. And they then tend to meet at every bloody World Cup. But the only time the Fijians have managed to beat the Welsh was that 2007 World Cup. It's just that game was so big in the memory that it feels heavy. There's probably a bunch of you who weren't even alive for that game. But it was such a massive result that it feels like it weighs more heavily. But Wales have had Fiji's number in recent times. They've won 5 of the last 5. Some of them have been close. I mean, the average score is 28-18 across the last 5, which goes back a decade. The last 5 matches are 2014, 15, 19, 21, and 23. 3 of those being World Cup games. In the pool, you've got a 17-13, you've got 23-13, 29-17, 38-23, 32-26. So no kind of real stupid blowouts and a couple of close-ish ones. So it's a good rivalry between these sides. The fact that they meet at all the World Cups is just one of those bizarre facts of the draw. But Wales do go into this one as favourites, despite the fact they're on a bad run, despite the fact they're ranked lower than Fiji in the rankings, despite the fact that Fiji got the big gun players back. Wales are still favourites at home. 7 points with the bookies. Rugby Forecast algorithm is a little bit less optimistic, saying 4 points for the Welsh. So Fiji go into this one away from home as underdogs. How quickly can they get the big guns to gel in with a largely kind of Fijian and Drua-based squad? Likewise, how well will Wales's Gloucester boys settle back into the team? It is on at the Principality. It's an afternoon game, 1:40 in the afternoon kickoff, which is 2:40 in the morning for me in New Zealand, and I think 1:40 in the morning for you guys in Fiji. I may end up watching this one delayed. 2:40 is brutal. That's like too early and too late, both at the same time. Luke Ramos, the Frenchman, is the referee for this one. If you haven't seen it, the British and Irish Lions shirt is out. I'm not still sold on it yet. It may grow on me the more I see it, but my first impressions weren't fantastic. But if you want to buy it, I'm an affiliate of the British and Irish Lions store, and I've got a link down in the description if you want to get your early hands on some gear for the British and Irish Lions tour next year. How many of these Welsh guys are going to make that squad will be an interesting one. But yeah, how do you guys think this one is going to go? Do you think the bookies and the algorithms got it right and that Wales go in as deserved favourites, or do you see Fiji getting an upset win with the return of some big European-based players? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We've put out a heap of previews, a heap of stats. There'll be some reviews and more stats and whatnot to come. You guys take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.